Hello everyone, it's Merlin here, and I just got back from seeing The Hobbit. Now, I gotta tell you guys right away, seriously, this movie was awesome. I mean, I expected it to be good, but it was better. It definitely beat my expectations. It was a really solid adaptation. It's definitely in the same vein as the original trilogy. Honestly, I liked this film, the first part of the Hobbit trilogy, better than the Two Towers. Honestly, for me, like at least after this first reaction, it was really, really good. And I had my doubts initially about them being able to stretch that small book into three movies, but now the way they paced it, I definitely would say it's good. The basic plot, for those of you that don't know, basically it's Bilbo Baggins recounting his original adventure about how Gandalf, who basically feels that Bilbo needs to get out and just explore and grow as an individual, so Gandalf signs him up on a quest, kind of against his will, to aid these 12 dwarves in reclaiming their kingdom. Now, many years ago, their prosperous kingdom was attacked by a dragon named Smaug, who completely overran the mountain, and they lost everything. In addition to that, there were all these wars with various orcs, and the leader of the band of dwarves, Thorin Oakenshield, who is really awesome, by the way, he's got a huge chip on his shoulder because he feels it's his responsibility to reclaim his kingdom, to give his people a home again, and he's got a lot of bitterness because the elves didn't help him when his kingdom was being overrun and being attacked by Smaug. He lost his father, he lost his grandfather. He feels he's got a big legacy to live up to, but he's got his doubts. And despite that, he's a really badass character. He was really awesome. And pretty much, it's just the first part of the journey to go and reclaim the kingdom. Gandalf provides a map which allows for a secret entrance into the mountain. So basically, it's a suicide mission that Bilbo decides, what the hell, I'll come along with them. And I'm not going to spoil too much, but they go against all kinds of things. They fight trolls, they fight goblins, they fight giant wolves. I mean, if you've read the book, you know basically what the plot is, but I'm still not going to spoil it for the plenty of the people that I'm sure haven't seen it. As far as it being an adaptation, it was honestly pretty accurate, like, for the most part. Now, there were a few discrepancies, like, there is the orc leader, who is kind of sort of the antithesis for Thorin. There isn't really, like, a main villain in the first part of the Hobbit story, so I can understand why they kind of made this giant orc guy with his white wolf to kind of be the primary antagonist for the film, but it worked. And they also added in a lot of backstory with the dwarves and the kingdoms to give the story a more sense of epic scope. It really made you feel like you were there in Middle Earth again. There was a little bit of padding, but it definitely helped make the film feel more solid. My friends and I kind of discussed this and came to the conclusion that there probably won't be a whole lot more extra to these films, like no special editions. I mean, who knows, there could be. Honestly, for a first part of a trilogy, it was really, really good. Like, those 3 hours flew by. Like, it was really good. Now, I will say that there's definitely a little bit more CGI noticeable in this film. It doesn't seem to be quite as practical as the original films. Of course, that could be the fact that I saw it in 3D. But though I would say the CGI was a little more noticeable, it wasn't bad. Like, it still looked really good. It was integrated pretty well. A little more noticeable, but not bad. And as far as the 3D goes, actually, it was fairly decent 3D. I can't really say that there were any major issues that I had with it. I didn't really pop out a whole lot. Like, there were definitely a few good moments. Like, there's a part where a few things randomly fly towards you. It definitely catches you by surprise a few times, but all in all, it was decent 3D. Not the best I've seen. It wasn't on the level of Avatar or Dread, but it was decent 3D. It didn't detract from the experience for me too much, except the part when there's those long sweeping camera motions, like, what Peter Jackson likes to do of the entire landscape, which looked beautiful, by the way. They got everything pretty much the same. I think they filmed on the same location. And yes, there were a few cool cameos. You got to see Ian Holm one more time at the beginning of the film. There are a few other familiar characters from the original trilogy that you guys recognize. Some cool little cameos there. All in all, the music was great, but it had a few of the old themes that were revisited, but the music was, for the most part, original. They also integrated a couple of the songs the dwarves and goblins sing from the book, which was cool, nice little touch. I was kind of surprised they did that. I was like, they're not really going to do that, and they did. The action was good. There was definitely good pacing, like I said before. Oh, the acting? The acting was really solid in this film. I think most of the characters pretty much stood out. I mean, definitely the highlights were, of course, Bilbo. The actor for Bilbo did a really, really good job. I thought he was amazing. And Bilbo is honestly probably a stronger character in some ways than Frodo. And the actor did a fantastic job portraying that character. Absolutely. And of course, Ian McKellen as Gandalf delivered excellently. Thorin Oakenshield, his actor was great, and a couple of the other dwarves really stood out. They had some pretty good character traits, and the actors definitely accentuated them. Now, to be honest, about half the dwarves, they had like a few little tropes that they were semi-memorable, but they would stick out, but not in any particularly incredible way. All in all, though, they were still entertaining. Like, I didn't dislike any of the dwarven characters, how they were written or how the actors portrayed them. Also, Gollum does make an appearance in this film. They also kept the atmosphere of that particular scene from the book really good. It was very intense, and And my friends and I, before the film, were kind of worried that they might try to make Gollum a little more comical because he's kind of had that bent in the movies. In the books, he's actually much darker, kind of creepier, definitely more insane and a more frightening figure. And they definitely, it was much more balanced. Like, you actually felt afraid of Smeagol for once in this film. So they kept that original scene fairly accurate to the book. They do integrate with Sauron in the ring and all those other aspects. Trying to think of anything else here that might be significant. Yeah, honestly, from my initial reactions, I would say that this was a really, really good beginning to a new trilogy. I'm not worried. I actually think that it has potential to possibly beat the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, which I know is hard to believe. I didn't believe it, but it's definitely lighter. I mean, the Hobbit's a lighter story. It's not as dark, and in some ways, not quite as epic a story because there's less at stake than the Lord of the Rings. You know, that there is definitely that comparison that you have to take into account. But despite that, they managed to make it feel much more epic. And one thing about The Hobbit that I liked is that it kind of, in some ways, felt more like a fantasy. There were a lot more aspects of magic, a lot more creatures. They just included a lot more things. Like, you also had Radagast the Brown, who was played by Sylvester McCoy, who's the seventh Doctor in Doctor Who, by the way. He was awesome. They integrated him really well. And they also are working on some sort of necromancer plot. So, all in all, even though they added a few things, it was relatively well done. I think that it's cool to see how they're adapting it and what new ways they'll take it. But so far, it's a really, really strong, solid foundation to a new trilogy. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm very excited for the next film. It's kind of funny. After we left, we all discussed the same thing. Like, I didn't want it to end because there's a scene towards the end where they cut to the next big challenge they're gonna have to face, which I'm not gonna spoil it for you. You might have guessed if you read the book or if you were listening carefully for the next film. And oh man, I just wanted to keep going. If they had had the whole trilogy done, seriously, the way it was going by those first 3 hours, if they'd had the whole trilogy done, another 9-hour saga, I would have sat through the whole thing. I wouldn't have cared. I mean, hopefully an intermission or something, but if necessary, no bathroom breaks, no food. I would have kept watching for 9 hours straight. It was really, really excellently done. Peter Jackson, I don't know if it's possible for you to outdo yourself. Of course, it could just be possible that him and Del Toro are a really great team. I could definitely sense some of Del Toro's work here. He helped adapt the screenplay. It was excellent. It was really, really good. It took me back to Middle Earth. Really had a great atmosphere, great direction, great acting. Of course, a great story with some really solid writing behind it to adapt it. Good effects, epic soundtrack, great costume work, makeup design. Just really, really good stuff that we were pretty much all expecting anyway. So I would definitely say, if you have not seen The Hobbit yet, go see it. Especially if you're a fan of The Lord of the Rings, or if you like the original movies, I would highly recommend this one. This one is definitely on par with the original trilogy, might have potential to be better. So, honestly, I have no significant complaints about this film. I would give The Hobbit a 5 out of 5 stars. It is really, really well done. Very fun, very enjoyable, had a good theme, good message, good adaptation. Great film. I hope the other two films follow suit. And yeah, those are my basic thoughts on The Hobbit. So guys, if you're interested at all, I guarantee you'll enjoy it. Check it out. And yeah, that's all I've got to say. So those are my thoughts on The Hobbit. If you guys saw it and you have any opinions, please let me know. This is Merlin signing out. Until next time.